Hello everyone, Kenty Tiger here with Bengali Engineering and Play. We are back in Space Engineers, continuing on with our base building kind of tutorial thing. I'm calling this whole series the basic survival tutorial, and we are kind of in the advanced stages here. So we have secured our basic survivability by our little station down here. I moved the base building project above that, so it was not causing a shadow, so we could actually see what we were doing. Um, this was, if you remember this piece, which was actually a great big long piece, um, from our there was a video called the base building tutorial, which basically outlined all of the different items that you might need in any given base. And basically, I have been grinding those pieces down as we build them into the base. I've been grinding them off, so it's basically I've been using this as my little check sheet. Um, so I made a few changes off camera here. One of the things I did was I punched a bunch of holes in this bulkhead to bring effectively air onto this side of the bulkhead. And I had about 5 of them on there, and then was like, do I really need 5? Let's just have a redundant system. So I have one on one side, one on the other side. And so I removed the junctions from the bulkhead and then filled those holes in the bulkhead. The other thing I did was up here. So in the zoom down view. So ultimately, I want to arm this thing, and so to arm that thing, we need a way to plumb in protective measures, which is really to say the turrets. Now, whether you have the turrets on top and the bottom is really about how you're going to utilize this base. I'm really only going to put them on the top, and the reason I'm only going to put them on the top is because ultimately, because this thing is a vanilla base, generic. There's nothing fancy about it at all. It's actually very blocky. So not the most gorgeous base, but for somebody who needs a base, the quick paste, put it in base, then this may be actually what you want. So because it's vanilla, we'll go ahead and put this eventually up on the workshop, so people can use it, tear it apart, play with it, do whatever they want with it. So the idea here is that this base, as it is, could be used just as easily in space as on a planet. If it's on a planet, you set it on the ground, boom, you're done. If it's in space, paste it, and it's where you want it. So I'm only going to put turrets on the top, because obviously if you paste this into the ground, then you'll have those turrets frozen. It's going to cause your game some problems, because now it's a physics interaction between a normally movable object, namely the turret, and voxels, which always cause some CPU heartache. So having said that, let's go ahead and look here and see how we can paste these in. I tend to, ironically enough, point these towards the center. So I guess if I were really pointing them towards the center, it would be like this. And I tend to use more Gatling turrets than missile turrets. And the reason for that is missiles are great, but A, you can shoot missiles out of the air, so they're not always effective, and they cost a lot more in resources. Missiles, that is, cost a lot more in resources, and I've found them to not be as accurate. And what I mean by that is, even though your missile is a much more powerful armament, certainly, getting it to your target is the challenge, because you can shoot missiles down. They're a lot slower. And the AI is a little strange, because sometimes it's aiming where the thing is, and then when the missile actually gets there, if the object is moving, your target's moving, then it's no longer where it was when the missile was fired. Which is to say, the missile does not have target lock guidance capability. Anyway, I tend to not use very many missiles. So having said that, let's go ahead and shift over to the Gatling cannon. The interesting thing about the Gatling cannons, they are pretty effective. Both the vanilla, whether it be Gatling gun, the Gatling turret, or the missile turret, the control panel, which you see, let me go ahead and rotate that so it's kind of towards me, is facing in the opposite direction of the discharge of the weapon. And what I mean by that is this thing is now pointed off the screen to the top right corner. In this case, pointing to the top left corner. So when I put this down, it's going to be pointed towards the center. Just the opposite of that is where you get to the magazine, and that's actually under the gun mount. So why do I mention that? Because ultimately, I turn off the auto rotate, or the idle movement. This end was an unfortunate, because the assembler is in this end. The assembler actually connects on the outside, so I didn't have an easy way to put this in, so I ended up having to stagger, so the connection actually comes in this way and then goes under the gun, unfortunately. Wasn't how I really envisioned that, but all right. And we put one more here, already facing the correct direction, which is what I wanted. And then this one here is going to be the single missile turret. And again, I don't do nearly as many missile turrets, because not as accurate, much more force capable, obviously, but all right. So we have connectors here, which we'll get to in a moment, but for right now I'm just going to deal with the turrets. So one of the things that the arming radius of these items can go out to 800. The first thing I'm going to do is turn off idle movement. Your arming radius at 600 will really bring your accuracy in a bit. When you get out to that 800 meter mark, that's pretty far out there. Can you engage? Yes, absolutely you can. Will it engage effectively? Maybe not. 200 meters doesn't seem like that far away, but it can be quite a bit. All right. Or maybe for our missile, we'll go ahead and leave this at 600, and then the rest. So target missiles is going to be turned off. Target characters turned off. That makes sense. And then target neutrals turned off. Now, why target neutrals is on by default, I will never know. If you want to listen to some really heated discussions on the forums, that's one of them. And I absolutely agree with them. It's absolutely absurd and stupid that you would target your neutrals by default. Why would you think that's a good idea? In the case of my Gatling turrets, I do like to target missiles, so I leave all that on. Alright, so idle movement's off. These are going to arm a little further out, and then everything uses conveyor systems. So in this case, these are turrets. I'm just going to create a single group and put everything into them. We're going to do toolbar off. They are inventory capable, so I'm going to leave that there and then turn them off on the terminal. So we have our program block still. Let's talk about connectors. So I added 4 connectors. I'm going to turn this kind of into somewhat of a landing area up here, landing pad, which is why I added in these flush mounted connectors. But what I want to do is figure out what this connector should be called, and I think I'm just going to call it side 1. There is another one over here that I put in. I talked about that one last time, so this gives an alternative side connector here, and I think we're going to go ahead and call this side 2. So nothing fancy there. Up here, it's kind of arbitrary what you call these. So I'm going to go ahead and call this pad 1A. And this is going to be pad 1B. And the reason why I call that 1A and 1B is this is the farthest outside. So this is off to the end of the base. So this is going to be pad 2, and then A and B. And normally when you're talking about a ship, you can talk about forward and aft and port and starboard. Not so easy on, this is pad 2A. Not so easy when it comes to a base, because a base may not be oriented in any particular direction. So calling it port and starboard or forward and aft is a bit arbitrary. So likewise, my naming conventions here are equally a bit arbitrary. Alright, I think we're going to do a little bit of colorizing. And one of the things that I like to do is have a very definitive pattern here. So what I'm going to do is roll all the way over to here. And, oh darn it, I didn't want to do that. Darn it. That was supposed to be colorizing, not pasting. Unfortunately, we're a little bit uneven here. I think it's uneven. But not entirely intentional. It's just that's, yeah, we're a little uneven on our markers here. The reason for this is connectors are not airtight. unfortunately, I think it would be really intelligent to have a connector. So what I needed to do was put a conveyor junction underneath. So I actually came over into the bulkhead and then up in the bulkhead. So my corners of the armor now are making the rooms airtight, while leaving the connector, you know, up on the top here. So if all is well, and I guess we might as well check that. If all is well, then this room is pressurized, which it is. So O2 goes high, and you can see all of these are green. So my theory was I need to figure out how to make this remain airtight. I think we have accomplished that. So let's go ahead and look in this room as well. And I see O2 high, but let's make sure. Yep. So we're all green. And these guys idle. It says they're not idle, but alright, one last room to check. Make sure we are where we think we are. Are we? Yes, we are pressurized. Alright. So, bottom line is we are offset just slightly, but we'll have to live with that. So continuing on here, we're going to paint across. In fact, I really want to paint one more, so I have two, but maybe I didn't have two. Yes, I did. All right. So I'm going to change this a little bit. We're going to add roof out here. And then we're going to do some more coloring. This is unfortunately a little bit boring. I like to do white landing pads, and the reason I like to do white landing pads is because you can see it really well. So when you're trying to land, having a white landing pad is a little easier to land on because any light reflects pretty well. Alright, partially done there, so let's continue on. We'll swoop to the side, back over. The reason I'm not using the more wild cards like the control is because it will go down into the utility areas, and I didn't want to do that. And then finally this one, which will be the very edge of the pad. Alright, so that pretty much has set up the top of the base as a landing area. I'm looking at this as kind of like fighters or miners or something small that can just come in, land, refuel, and off they go again. So not necessarily anything huge, although you could land a fairly good sized spacecraft on the top here, as long as, I mean, you may not be able to line up with one of the connectors, depending on how big it is, because obviously you are 5 blocks away from, well, technically 4 blocks, because that's got a swivel on it. So the weapon there is a 3x3 grid, which means up to, basically I have right to the edge of the black, where black changes back into orange, that I could land something in. So a little bit limiting if you're talking about something pretty good sized, but for small craft, you should be fine. So that's why I'm thinking that will work. All right, so the wonder is, what are we going to do out here? And I'm thinking a larger landing pad area or hangar bay. So let's put the living area in here. So the first thing I want to do is we'll go ahead and transition from the utility area to a living area. And the way I'm going to do that is to go ahead and put another set of blocks here. And that's mostly to continue on with what's here. So I suppose I could leave this as tiger orange here and continue on. That wouldn't be a bad idea. And why did it change colors? Didn't. It's just space engineers being space engineers. Select black again, and armor block, spin that around, and light armor. All right. All right. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to put some windows in. I do like windows. And I tend to put windows in, so this is light armor. Now, the downside to windows is they're not as tough as armor. They're windows, they're not armor. They are made out of bulletproof glass, which is all fine and dandy. So what I tend to do when I am building is do my windows too deep, 2 layers. So I need girder to build windows. Of course I do. So placing windows can be a bit of a challenge, and in this case my window is, in this case, as you can see, so the red block is where that's actually fascinating, or fascinating. That's where it's fastening to. So this bottom block that you see in the center is where it's actually going. That's its mount point. That's not its only mount point, but that's right now the mount point for actually building this thing. Now, what does that mean? The window, of course, is on one side, and you see that it takes up the whole block, but it's actually not taking up the whole block. And what I mean by that is, I as a character, and let's go ahead and look at this. You see where the window is. Pasted pretty quick, but I can go all the way up here and bump into this, and now I appear to be inside the block, but I cannot paste anything on this because its bounding box is actually the same size as the window itself. So one of the ways that we can mount stuff on the outside, now there's another option here, is actually putting in vertical windows, which they do block the view a lot. So I tend to not use them, which is why I like to use windows. But one of the other things you can use in aiding, in fact, let's, I'm gonna reorganize my, a little bit. I like using the catwalk plates to do a lot of things, and so windows, you notice how there is a shading on this side. If I go over here, you notice that there's not a dramatic difference, even though I'm staring at the sun. So there is a definitive inside and outside. In this case, the outside looking in, it appears to be shaded, which it is. So one of the things that you really need to do when it comes to windows is you need a surface that you can attach to. And you can actually use these plates, construction components. You can actually use catwalk plates for window mounting. So let me go into inventory here and look for construction components. Those are medical components, construction components. There's construction components. 500 of those. I don't think I need more than that. So what we'll do is put 6 of these up, and what that's doing here is adding a mounting point for windows. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. We'll spin that around. 3, 4, 5, and 6. So what we're trying to do is be able to actually double pane my windows. And, get our border. So we do that by giving ourselves a mounting surface, because this is on the surface. I need some sort of a mounting place. And if you notice, when I put this in here, it's going to give me a mount surface by way of that that catwalk plate. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. There's going to be another one here, and then one on the front. So basically we are now double paned, and once I have this mounting point, then I'm actually mounting on the window, in this case to the right. So it does actually work. So there's that one and this one. Alright. I'm going to put a layer of blocks here, and the question is what, it's kind of arbitrary. So I'm going to go ahead and, you know what, I think we're going to go ahead and put blocks in. And then this thing on this side is going to be the same, so let's do the windows. And inverting. So if we look at this, we have effectively turned everything around. So if I reverse the window, now I have the shady side on the outside, but it's on the inside of that block. So having said that, I want to make sure that I'm facing my windows the correct direction. I'm putting these in. And I need to get up here a little farther, and there it is. There we are. Alright, and then once again we put in our blocks. Oh, darn it.
Energy low.
Energy is low. Change color to black. And then we're going to put in a slope. Same thing on this side. And one of the other questions, it depends again on how artistic you want to get, as to whether you're putting windows on the roof. So my thoughts is hanger out here, which is going to be a pretty good sized hanger. So with that being the case, then we would need some kind of an access to get in here. So gee, let's get a door back on here. Let's do solar panel. We can add on solar panels later. All right, so I think we're gonna have dual airlocks. Oh, I didn't want them black, but oops, we can change colors thankfully very easily. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. Even though that seems a bit silly. All right. All right. Let us go ahead and it's going to be a little more challenging. We're going to go ahead and put our beam across. I don't want to build the roof yet because because I want to be able to work in there easily without having to go inside and outside and bounce back and forth.
Energy critical.
Same thing here. So the idea here is I want to ultimately have room to put in the windows, which is basically this area looking out onto the hangar bay. The question is what to do here. Now, normally, if we were to think about things in terms of this is all the stuff we can do, we've loaded in a bazillion mods, we could do things like a Keister's Decorations, which has all kinds of furniture. There's several different furniture mods out there that let you add really very neat amenities into your living areas. Because I want to leave this purely vanilla, then I'm a little more limited in what I can do there. So I kind of have to simulate barracks and you know, the question is, do I create a hallway here and then in, or do we kind of have an open barracks kind of an environment? And one of the things you can do, let's go ahead and use this here. I think we're done with those for the moment. So looks a little bit strange, but we'll use you know what, I'm gonna change my mind here and start using my other button bar solar panel. We'll put that one back in there, and we'll use number 3. We're gonna grab this thing, we're gonna grab this, and interior wall. We want to create this thing that looks like a usable living area. So I'm going to create 3 high, and do this. Give everybody their private space here. Turn this again. So the idea here is these are kind of bunks. So even though this is considered a passage, we turn them sideways and we call them bunks. Let's go ahead and we'll create another one back to back here. One more. Then we will reverse this guy so they're facing in. And do the same here. 3.
Now the question is, how many beds are we going to create? And that is really entirely up to the perspective of
Energy critical.
what is your your intention of your base here. Do you have a bazillion
No
people? Is
energy.
this a holdover? Is it constantly manned type of an environment? What actually is this? So the next real question is what about showers and toilets and all that sort of thing? And again, this is kind of your own perspective on how you want to simulate, life on the space station here. So we have created 12 bunks, it looks like. The problem kind of with not having any inherent decorative ability is that you end up with really no way to easily add these obvious, this is a shower, this is a commode, this is a bunk. You kind of have to simulate all this stuff. And how you do that is a little limited because vanilla is vanilla. What I want to do here in this case, I'm going to go back over to 2. I'm not going to spend a lot of time creating this simulated environment, and I know that that's kind of a cop out, but here's what I want to do. I want to put in 2 air vents on each side, and then the challenge here is I want to put windows out here, and to do that is a little bit limiting in how do I get the air on out through here. And what I think I'm going to do is actually put a conveyor in there in the bulkhead. That way I can actually put a full window in up there. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on this side. So we know we're going to duplicate everything we did. So it's a solid piece, rather a straight through connector, conveyor, over, then an elbow. Case, I no longer have grinding ability because I'm out of power again. So we'll grind that one down and grind this one down, and then change colors again. And we're going to put a conveyor junction there and a conveyor junction there, which will allow us to put our air through the bulkhead there, and then continue on. Now I'm going to reverse this and put an inverted window in. And what is that going to do? So let me, because I'm kind of simulating a living space without really doing a whole entire living space. Oh my. We're off. So we're going to put 2 in the middle. So what I need to do is grind these 2.
No energy.
So we'll grind that one and that one, which means we'll have 3 large windows at the outside, and so 1, 2, 3 large windows on the outside, and we will have to put 2 windows on the inside, rather 2 wide 2 by 3 instead of what we have here. There's those 2, and then these 2. And G will go all the way down here to Windows. We will select the, here we go, 2 by 3 window. We're going to turn this one up on end like this. We're going to select the inverted. So there we go. So the same type of window, and we put one there and then one here. So slightly uneven, but at least it's symmetrical, right? All right. So having done all that, we now have to decide: are we putting windows up here, or are we putting blocks? I like the idea of windows. However, from a purely security perspective, that might not be the best idea. So perhaps blocks it should be. So this is going to take a little bit of time. A little more sturdy to use blocks, of course. And oops, too far. Alright, we got this one here, and we'll go ahead and use the system to grind everything down because we don't have any energy. Alright. Let's go down and get some more energy here.
No energy.
And do one more thing off screen here. One of the things I wanted to do, parts, 4-panel. So I have a paste. Oops. Cursor back on the screen, perhaps. Alright, so we haven't named the airlock doors here, so we need to do that. One of the things that I really like is information. Now, to do this quickly, I'm going to turn on Space Master. I have a pre-configured panel that I like to use. So, turn it right side up. I think I'll go ahead and, as we're mostly simulating here anyway, a lot of this is going to blank out because things are not named the same here. So one of the other things that will come into play, 0.7. Oh, actually, this one was fine. Got going on the wrong one here. 0.8. This one needs to be 0.7, which actually already is. So there's two more items that are mod items that aren't necessarily going to show up here if this is used in world. So door status right now, the problem here is the naming conventions, because all the names, custom, group, and this is actually doors, attack, sliding is the name of, darn it, name of the group here, so we can get rid of that. There you see they're all showing up there. And the doors that we pasted here, so these outer airlock doors, they're not showing up here because I haven't actually put them in the group yet. So what did we accomplish here? We just put a whole lot of information on the bulkhead that we didn't have otherwise. So we have all of our generators that you can see, all of our power generators. In this case we have reactors and batteries. The batteries right now are at 100%. They are not putting out any significant amount of power, and they are not taking in any significant amount of power. So we have 360 megawatts of capability with those batteries, and right now very little input comparatively. Alright, so according to this, with the uranium we have, which is wow, 1 million and 1 million each, it looks like, or 1 million total of uranium. let's do a couple things. So one of the things here, we have a list of stuff here that doesn't look like it's working, and I actually want to change this. So this is actually large reactor 1. And what this will put is a line large reactor 1 on or off. What's it doing? Is it working? Is it idle? What's it doing? And this will actually show the uranium that is in the reactor. So that's what we wanted to do here. And our target is 300,000 uranium. That may or may not be appropriate. So we're going to delete these, and then we're going to copy this. So there's for reactor 2, reactor 3, and reactor 4. And then we'll go in and change to 2, 3, 3, and 4. All right. So once I click OK here, this theoretically should update and put more information on, which it does. So large reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's showing me the status of that reactor individually, as well as the uranium that is in the reactor. So in this case I have 250K, my target is 300K. So if I were to go ahead and go into reactors here, let's go ahead and open that up, do react, look at this. So we're outputting 1 megawatt, which is not a whole lot. Let's go ahead and go into inventory, check reactors. So we're running at about 13,000 liters in here, and the limit is 24,000. So 13,000 versus 24,000. So we could technically go like 480,000 and be okay. So having said that, let's go ahead and look at this panel again. We're going to go ahead and adjust these things to say 48. Which should now be the equivalent of the 100%. Provided I can get my cursor in the right place. Alright, and OK, and escape. So you notice we updated this almost instantly. The good news is, given the power draw that we have currently with 250,000 uranium in each one of these, so I pretty much stole all the uranium off the other one, then it gives us a time before we run out. So 10,000 days, and if we consider there's about, in 1,000 days, we have about 2.5 years. So 2.5 times 10, okay, is 25 years. So we basically have about 25 years of uranium at current draw rates. So obviously if this changes any, then we're going to see something different. So right now we have plenty of uranium. That's kind of my updated status board, which is pretty much everything I wanted to see. So let's go ahead and fix these. We'll call that side A and this side B. Kind of arbitrary, but so this is door 15 is so we'll call that hangar B. This is the the inner door. And we'll go ahead and copy so this makes our life a little easier. So that's a Control C. We're going to close that door. And we're going to come to this door, do a K. This is a hanger B outer. And closed. Okay, so this is hanger A inner. We're going to leave that open. There's a reason. There's a method for the madness. And this is hanger A outer with a capital outer. Alright, now the reason I left this open is because I want to put these doors onto my door list. So I'm going to turn those off. We've got all of our connectors, which I'll go ahead and create a group called connectors. How about? We'll do a save. We're going to leave those on the toolbar because if I put in like a control console or something like that, then I want to be able to access those. And we're going to go ahead and turn those off on the terminal. Get those off there. Program block. And here's our new sliding doors. And we're going to add those to the group by Control and left click. You'll see it come up in the group name. We'll do a save. And then we'll do the same thing here. Toolbar off and terminal off. Those are going to vanish. All right. This is habitat. So we'll rename these just so we can possibly copy those in somewhere else. All right, program block and LCD panels becomes systems LCDs. We do a save. We're going to turn those off on the toolbar. We're going to turn those off on the terminal. Poof, gone. All right, the last thing we're going to do, because I'm running over time, spin this around. We're going to go ahead and leave the lights on the bottom. So there's 1, 2, and then we'll put in 3 and 4 over here. 3 and 4. I apparently still have Space Master on. Darn it. If you have Space Master on, it will build to owner nobody. But if it's if you're building with Space Master, then, or without Space Master, you're building regularly, then it will be to you. Whoever built it will own it. So this is Habitat 01. Control C to copy that. 02. Control V and 3. Control V and 4. Then we take those 4, which should be owner me, and we'll go up here to the top. Control, left click to bring us up into the group. We'll do a save, which now adds those onto that group. Then we'll do the config toolbar off and terminal off, which should get rid of all those. All right, now you see we have a little problem here, but we don't actually have a little problem here. But this is kind of somewhat of a test. So one of the things I want to show is, hey, we have our new doors, which showed up here, but hey, they're open. Okay, so the good news is we can close these. So to close these, we're going to go like this. We're going to close that inner door and then the outer door, and we want to see that. You see our status panel, a little hard to see, especially for you guys, but they all went closed. And then if we look in here, you see all of my air vents went green and they filled up the space. So that space is now pressurized, which is what we wanted. All right, now we've got a few things that we need to add on here. We added some armaments, but we need, obviously we have air vents, but we need to add a few things like the medical bays and the cryogenic bays. And we also need an antenna. So we've got 3 things that we're missing. We've already added some armaments, but in the interim, we're going to go ahead and get rid of this guy just to get it out of our way. So let me change colors to our grind color. We do a control shift and middle mouse button to repaint the whole grid. And then we'll see that, taking that apart. Alright, so we have completed our habitat, which is to say we have fully enclosed it and pressurized it. And the next evolution will be to add our cryogenic chambers on there and our medical bays. And then we'll start working on our hangar bay, which I think is what's going to be out here. So, with the plan for the future in place, this is Kenty Tiger signing off. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.